In this video, we're going to be painting fire. No, we're not just going to be changing the blending mode on an image of fire. You can do that, a lot of people do, and that's how they do fire in Photoshop. We're actually going to be painting it from scratch. So first of all, I'm starting with an image that has a dark background. This is going to be important because when you're working with fire images, fire as a light source is very difficult to see if the background of your image is light colored also. So it looks much better if you're using a dark background. I have a model here that I shot in the studio and she has her hand out, and what I want to do is create some fire inside of that hand. So here we go, we have our base layer. Make sure you unlock this, rename this so that it can be edited later. I've already done that, so just make sure you do. And then let's add a new layer on top. Very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit D on the shortcuts. That's going to reset my foreground background colors so that my foreground is black, my background is white. And we're going to be toggling back and forth between foreground and background using X. So if you notice when I push X, my foreground background changes. I'm going to be using that a lot. So keep in mind D to reset your colors, X to switch and toggle between foreground and background. So now we have them reset. Black is my foreground color. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Option or Alt Delete or Backspace. That's going to fill this layer with black. So now we have a completely black layer. Wow, so cool. All right, we're getting there. Go ahead and get the brush tool and make sure that in your brushes you've selected a soft edged brush. Now I have a pressure sensitive one. That's optional. If you want to do that, you can, but make sure it's soft. That's the main thing. We don't want a strictly hard brush. We want one we can adjust the hardness on. So now I have a soft edged brush. I'm going to use my right bracket key to bring that up to a nice size. I'm going to hit X so that my foreground color is now white. And then I'm just going to paint a line. All right, we're going to use this as our example, and we're going to create our fire colors using just this. I did this at 100% opacity, by the way, so that we have a full range of black to white. So now we have our layer 1. Let's rename this to fire. And we're going to go and create an adjustment layer. We're going to look for color balance. Add that above the fire layer. And then hover your cursor on the line between the two layers, hold Option or Alt, and click so that this layer is now clipped to the layer below it. You can also right click and choose clipping mask. So there we go. We have the layer clipped. We have a color balance here. And you'll notice in the color balance interface, if you've never used it before, that you have options for shadows, midtones, and highlights. What we're going to do is we're going to adjust the colors for each of those. So slide that midtones to the red and slide the bottom slider over to the yellow. Now you see what's happening here is we're recoloring the midtones of this image. So I'm going to get them to a color I like for fire midtones. So you can see my values here. I added red, added yellow. Let's go over to shadows. I'm going to add red into the shadows. Again, add some yellow. We're trying to make it look like a burn. And then go over to the highlights and we're going to do the same thing. Now this, I am just eyeing it up. These values are completely at your discretion. You can just slide these sliders to your heart's desire and find the colors you like best. So right now I have slid the red to the right and the yellow to the left on every one of these so that this is the color I have. Again, this is just a quick example. You could completely switch this and make blue flames if you want, which is really cool to do, but I'm going to stick with this color for right now. So there we go. We have our color balance. And I'm just going to leave that called color balance. So down here on my fire layer, I'm going to hit D. Again, reset my colors, and I'm going to Option Delete to fill it with black once again. So now we have nothing there. I'm going to go to the blending mode, set it to screen, and now I'm going to go down to the hand area and I'm going to paint some shapes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a brush, same brush, I haven't changed brushes. I'm actually going to harden that brush holding shift. I'm going to click the right bracket key a couple of times. You can also right click and just slide the hardness if that's easier for you to do. I'm going to make sure white is my foreground color, so I'm painting with white. And then up here on the opacity slider, I'm going to take this down. Now I'm going to be using a lot of shortcut keys for opacity. You'll notice that my opacity is probably going to jump a lot in this video. So don't forget that you can use your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers on the keyboard to change your opacity in one click. So tap 1, you get 10%. 2, you get 20%. 5, 50%, etc. So I'm going to tap 1 and take my opacity down to 10%. And I'm going to make one brush stroke. I'm not going to lift my pen from the tablet because I'm using 10% opacity. So if I take my pen up and I tap down again, I'm going to change the overall opacity if I paint over what I've already painted. So let's just paint a sort of globular shape where our fire should be. And it takes a little practice because you may not know what you want yet. That's all right. Just paint a shape of any kind there. All right, so this is the general area our fire is going to be painted in. Sweet. All right, now still 10% opacity. I'm going to lower my brush size and I'm just going to paint in some movement here in the fire. Now you'll notice that as my brush goes over other strokes, I'm lightening it a little bit. And down here where I really want there to be more of a glow, I could paint more and more, and I can get this sense that there's the origins of the fire, right? And it's getting darker as it moves out. So I'm getting a little bit of motion, movement, and that's all I'm trying to do. Not perfect. I don't want it to be perfect. It's okay. I'm going to move it up and just paint some motion into my fire. Now that looks terrible, but stick with me. It does get better. So now that I've done that, I want to create some empty spaces in my fire because fire tends to like curl when it moves up. So I'm going to hit X, switch to black as my foreground color. Then I'm going to get the 0 key to 100 opacity on that brush, and I'm going to just paint black in to create some gaps in that fire, just for the sake of movement. I like that. That looks better. All right. Now the magic tool, and that is going to be your smudge tool. It's right here on your toolbar where your blur and sharpen tool is. Your smudge tool is a wonderful thing. And my smudge brush, I'm using the exact same brush. We're pretty much going to use this one soft, round, pressure-sized brush for the entire tutorial. And you can choose whatever brush you're more comfortable with, but that's what I'm going to be doing. So now I'm smudging. I've got a strength up here, and I'm going to turn that strength to 40% for now and see how that looks. I'm just going to smudge in a circular fashion to create the movement of the fire. So I am just painting, lifting my pen, pressing it again, and swirling it. This is giving me some interesting shapes, and I encourage you be as chaotic as you want with this, because fire, if you've ever looked at fire, and I encourage you to Google and look at fire images, because this will help you as you're painting to know what you want it to look like. Fire is wild, man. It does not look uniform. So don't be afraid to get it a little crazy. I actually like it a little crazy. And when you start feeling like you're getting things about the way you want them, then stop for a minute and zoom out. So let's see what we got. It's not too bad. I still think I could tighten this shape up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this fire layer and I'm going to go into Filter, Liquify. Now inside of the Liquify dialog, I'm going to do a couple of things. I want to squeeze the top so that it gets a little smaller. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to choose the pucker tool. And I'm just going to give myself a large enough size that I can pucker it a little bit. And I'm just going to squeeze it down. Just painting lightly on top. Now I'm going to grab the brush for liquefying. I've got the pressure here at around 58. I'm going to take it down just a little bit to maybe around 40. And I'm just going to continue to shape a little bit with the liquify tool. The reason I'm doing this instead of smudge is the liquify tool is a little more powerful, so this gives me some bigger sweeping control whenever I'm painting, and sometimes I just find that it's easier to shape using the liquify tool. I like this, but let's see where our hand for our model actually is. So if you'll notice down here at the bottom, I have checked show background, and I'm just going to reduce the opacity so I can see there's where the background is. Okay, so now as I liquefy, I can see where her hand is at, and I want the fire to sort of curdle in her hand and be moving outward. All right, I think this has done what I wanted it to do, so I'm going to hit OK. And now we're going to start refining it. Go into the center, get a black brush, and I'm going to use like a 60% opacity and start painting in some holes in the fire. So we want to give it dynamics. If you've ever seen fire, it does sort of have these streaks and striations. And I know that this again looks weird, but we're going to be smudging this. So you're just painting it thinking, I am going to smudge this right now with the tool. So here we go, smudging. I'm using about 60%. I'm just dragging it along. I also still have a little bit of a soft edge on this brush. So you can experiment with the softness and the hardness of the brush to see how you prefer whenever you're smudging. I encourage you just practice, paint as much as you want. You can always start over again if you feel like you've messed something up, but you'll get used to it after a little bit, and it'll become easier the more you do it. Now, she's supposed to be holding it, so it should look like it's in her hand. Let's grab the fire and the color balance layer. Using the shift key, I'm selecting both. Holding down shift, I'm going to go down here and click on the folder. I'm going to group these up and call it flame. Then I'm going to add a layer mask, and I'm going to start masking out her fingers, which means I need the brush tool and I need black to be my foreground color. I'm still using the same brush. I've got a little bit of softness to the edges, and I'm using 100% opacity, and I'm just going to mask out where her fingers are. What this does is it just creates that illusion that she's holding the fire in her hand. Something that I find really helpful for creating the glow is select that fire layer, go over here and get your dodge and burn tools. Now, if you've done much editing, you're probably familiar with the dodge and burn tools, but I've got right now my dodge tool set to highlights, exposure to 50%, and I'm just going to paint in a little bit down here and brighten up those brights. This is just adding some contrast, and it's really bringing some streaks out in this fire. I want this fire to look fierce, and I love what's happening right now with this dodge tool. It looks super cool. Just dodging where I think there needs to be a little bit of dimension. Nice. All right. Now I can also do the same with the burn tool. So I'm going to go over here, get the burn tool. I've got it set to shadows in this case. I'm going to paint a little bit around the base with shadows. My exposure is at 20%. I've got it a little lower because I don't want to get rid of too much of my fire. But I do want to see what I can do here, creating dimension with this fire. Ooh, I like this. I actually like this a lot. Good stuff. All right, so that made a huge difference. We see a lot more dynamics right now in this fire, and you can continue doing this. So all of these techniques are things that I would layer up. I'd continue smudging, I'd continue dodging and burning until I just had a flame I thought was amazing. So at this stage, your fire is shaping up. And don't forget that if you're looking at your colors and you don't like them, you can go back at any point to your color balance and you can continue to adjust those. Get them the way that you like it. And that about wraps it up for how to actually create the fire. Now I'm going to go ahead with this image and I'm going to refine the overall image and change the lighting so that it matches the fire that we just created better. However, that's a tutorial for a different day. So if you want to see more information about lighting images and about compositing like that, and actually this is a great time to subscribe, like, comment as you watch the rest of this image come together. Thanks so much for checking out my work though. I hope this tutorial was helpful. You are always welcome to send me your questions, your comments, your suggestions, and I can't wait to see what you make with this fire. If this video was helpful, consider coming over to Instagram and following me to see more of my art and my work. I'd love to hear your comments and get your likes, and it just makes me feel so much better about myself. I hope to see you again soon. Thanks for watching.